President Biden has said the U.S. will have enough vaccines to vaccinate all Americans by May. But a new study out by the Boston Consulting Group suggests that about 40% of Americans may be hesitant to get the vaccine because of safety concerns. Let's bring in the CEO of Boston Consulting Group, Rich Lesser. Rich, it's always good to have you on. I know you've been speaking with a lot of businesses as they look ahead to what is expected to be some form of herd immunity by the summer. What are some priorities that they're looking at right now to try and make sure this return to the office is conducted in a safe way?
So I think there is a prevailing sense of optimism right now, which is encouraging, and the growth of supply of vaccines has gone faster than many anticipated, and the opportunities for many. So you highlighted job one. Job one is to do everything we can as business leaders, including this ad council program that the BRT and others have really gotten behind, many companies, to encourage people to get vaccinated quickly and to convince them and have them feel comfortable that it is a safe thing for themselves personally and the right things to do for themselves and their communities. So the faster we can make it easier for people to get vaccinated and encourage them to want to do it is job one. Second is how to manage a very complex period where different communities, different parts of the world will be at different stages of their ability to return. So this past 12 months has always been about managing through a pandemic where so many people have to work from home. The next phase is a time when some people can come in. How do you do it? How do you stage it? How do you understand government regulations, which may be very different in different parts of the country and certainly around the world? Business leaders are spending a lot of time getting ready for that.
Yeah, Rich, it seems like it's going to be setting up for some very interesting conversations in offices, considering a separate Glassdoor survey said that about 70% of employees thought that it would be required, or say that it should be required, that employees get vaccinated before they go back into the office. So, I mean, when you look at that, how strict and how tricky are those conversations going to be with business leaders around getting vaccinated before coming back in when you're dealing with all these kind of uncertainties? And as you said, everyone's kind of operating from a different position.
Well, it's really interesting. I've been in multiple conversations with CEOs about mandates and should we be mandating our employees to get vaccinated. I think there's hesitancy to go that far for most businesses. I think some may try it, and particularly those in service industries, may see it as something they'd really like to assure their customers. But it is hard to get to the stage of a mandate. I do think many, many businesses will be doing everything they can to educate, to encourage, and to incent their colleagues to get vaccinated, try to be role models themselves. I'm sure you'll see many pictures of senior business leaders as soon as it's their turn in line, not to cut the line, but to show that they are personally getting vaccinated, and to sponsor and support broader efforts, the ad council effort, others, to just educate the population more generally, and to particularly focus on vulnerable communities and communities where there may be more vaccine hesitancy.
Rich, let's talk about something else. I imagine you have been discussing with a lot of your clients, which is the impact of this $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. It seems like there's two ways of thinking about this. On the one hand, certainly a lot of businesses think this could be supportive of the economic recovery, but there's also this conversation that's happening now about how that's going to be paid for in taxes potentially being raised. What are you hearing from your clients on that, and how significant a concern is that?
I think most business leaders are quite optimistic about where we are right now and the potential for a very strong recovery globally, actually, which up till now, China's really been leading in, but I think the U.S. will also be very much with the stimulus we see, but hopefully around the world, Europe a bit later, but also this year and other places as well. So I'd say the overall mood is optimistic and encouraging, and a belief that we needed a substantial relief package, even though many in the business community might have preferred it to be somewhat less. But still quite substantial. I haven't heard many argue we didn't need a really big package. How big you can debate. I think there is a concern naturally among the business community around taxes. That's not surprising. I've heard it less directed to the response to this particular stimulus and more in people believing we need an infrastructure bill. That's the next one coming, strongly supporting it, but worrying about what in DC lingo is the pay fors, like how will those various elements of that bill get paid for? There, I do think while people really believe we need it, I think there is a concern about what will be the pay fors that will go into that and how will that be done. So that will be the dialogue. I think that'll be even the harder part of the dialogue. I think getting Republicans and Democrats behind a major infrastructure bill, including digital divide issues, I'm optimistic on. Navigating that issue is going to be a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're going to be playing what we heard from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later on in the show, but it sounds like she's planning on going big here and hoping to get some Republican bipartisan support on that. But when it comes to how companies might react to the first, major tax hike that we've seen since 1993 with this next kind of push by Democrats, I mean, how do companies respond to it? If it's expected and people are bracing for it, it doesn't seem like we would necessarily see a lot of spillover effects. But what do you hear in your discussions?
I think the main thing business leaders are focused on is, again, you have to separate individual from corporate taxes. I don't even want to talk individual taxes. That's a political discussion that we'll work through. As it relates to corporate taxes, the reforms of 2017 were the first time in 30 years, and the U.S. prior regime on tax corporate-wise was uncompetitive globally, and we saw it all the time in companies moving headquarters overseas, doing inversions, these weird archaic things to try to avoid that. We don't even hear that now. People want to invest in the U.S. The U.S. is considered a great place to do that. Does that mean you can't do anything on corporate taxes? Probably not. But I think the business community will be quite vocal in saying we have to be careful to preserve the competitiveness and ensure the U.S. is an attractive place for investment and opportunity if we're going to make the most of all the stimulus we're pouring into it. And I think that will be the debate. I'm sure a lot of it will be happening in closed door negotiations that legislators will be doing. I think it'll be essential to work through that carefully if we're going to have any hope at bipartisan legislation here, is the sense I get talking to legislators on both sides of the aisle.
All right, Boston Consulting Group CEO Rich Lesser, always love having you on. Thanks again for taking the time to chat. Be well.